What's up, guys? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Deck Talk Podcast, and we have a hammer. When I say a hammer, we have a hammer, and let's take care of some business real quick, and We had just got back. Actually, all three of us just got back from heading from Knoxville, Tennessee for the Bassmaster
Whoop,
Classic.
whoop. Yes, sir.
And I tell you, and it was a show and a half. We got to see that first day was kind of some small weights. Besides Easton come up there and just said, "Hold my beer and watch this" as the first person and put up a 21-pound bag. And then day 2 and 3 came, and we got to see some Tennessee River finest being put out there. But we want to thank all the sponsors that helped us get to the Bassmaster Classic. So we want to thank Lake Placid Freshwater Charter and Guides, JC Glide Baits, K and the K Custom Baits, Fish Lung, and Nose Down
Nose down
Scent.
scene.
Yeah, so we want to thank y'all for all that y'all have done for us and sponsoring us while we were at the Classic. So, but guys, if you don't know, I'm Colin Burnett.
Now, I'm Pappy J. Hey, I just want to quit real quick. If you ain't wearing green, I want you to take these two fingers and just go to your left shoulder and pinch really, really hard. Happy St. Patty's Day. It's my anniversary today, and I just want to give a quick shout out to my beautiful wife, Tina Vaughn. I mean, it's been she's been a blessing, and she's my rock, and I thank the world of her.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Also, on a salute to Valor this week, we ran into a gentleman at the Bassmaster Classic, and forgive me for not knowing his name. Man, we were running scattered every day, but he was a Navy vet, super 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 awesome guy. He we got to talking and collabing, and man, he told us all of his stories, and brother, we just want to thank you for all that you done, and all that you sacrificed. But this also goes out to all the men and women out there that put on that uniform daily to keep us safe, and so that we can do what we do here in the states. Also, guys, hey, we've been kind of ranting and raving about it for about 3 weeks now. Well, ever since we started. But hey, if you know somebody that is a vet or that is currently in service, hey, hit us up, Josh Vaughn at decktalkpodcast.com, and that's Colin Burnett at decktalkpodcast.com. Hit those emails, send us some names and MOSs, and so that we can get these people out and give them a good shout out, because they 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 well deserve it. They well deserve
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Without further ado, hey, let's jump into this thing, man.
yeah.
Let's do it.
So, guys, we have the guy that came to Chickamauga and Nickajack and said, "Hold up, Jacob Wheeler, you're not going to win this." And took Jacob Wheeler down with the last second. Barely got that fish over the gun on the last second, but and he took Jacob down. I like to say he's more humble about it, but I like to say he took Jacob Wheeler down on Jacob's home lake, because with us being out here on Chickamauga and Nickajack, we see Jacob out there quite a bit, either in his incognito icon or in the academy. Depends on if he wants to be spotted or not. So, but we
I gotta know something though. That
Okay.
last second that you flipped that fish over the gunnel. Did you know that you had secured it, or what?
I
What was
did.
what
So,
was
so
racing through your mind? I tell you what. And I don't mean to cut you off. I want to
no,
know from the hook set to the gunnel. What was it like for Jake?
All right, so here's the true behind the scenes. A few people have heard, really kind of what went down, decision making, and kind of what happened, but a lot of people still haven't. And there's only
Mm-hmm.
so much that Major League, both whether I'm willing to even talk about it in that moment, or just what all they can fit in, within their little
Right.
production window there. But
Right.
so I had been fishing in the back of Mullins. I believe it's Mullins
Yep.
Cove there. There was
Mm-hmm. Yep.
an expansive grass flats, all eelgrass. We all know very little change in eelgrass makes it very difficult
Mm-hmm.
to kind of find high percentage places. However, the bluegill that week had just started to move up, and they were, I'm sure some of them were spawning, but they were really more up there just making their beds as opposed to really spawning. And so anytime that I could find one of those bluegill beds or the start of one, that was a really high percentage place. And I had found a perfect. It was actually the biggest bluegill bed in that entire area, and I actually found that the first day. So that would have been the knockout round. It was
Mm-hmm.
raining, obviously really cloudy, low light conditions. Couldn't see what I was casting at, so I just picked up that berserk and started kind of burning it around, just thinking, if I can't see the hole, I'm going to cover water with something that I know eventually I'm going to wind it over one of those. And sure enough,
Mm-hmm.
I came across that bluegill bed, had no idea. I caught a 115, 2 pound minimum that week. So it was not a scoreable, and just really kind of kept the trolling motor on high and kept rolling. Had no idea what I had just come by.
Yeah.
And so on the championship round, I had fished all of my bluegill beds that I had already known about, and I was literally running out of Mullins. Had several other areas further down the lake on Nickajack that I wanted to fish. And as I was riding by that place, I thought, if a 115 lives there, a 2 pounder does. Like that's the same
Right.
fish, and you're
Right.
crazy for not at least stopping and making a few casts. And at this point, it was later in the first period. The sun was up, a lot better conditions to be able to see what you're actually casting at. And I'm not kidding you. I pulled a big U-turn out there, kind of an old Randy Howell, classic move.
Yeah.
And as soon as I stood up on the front deck, I turned around and looked at my camera guy and official. I said, "It is absolutely fixing to go down." Like I did not even have to make a cast. I knew that's what I'd
Right.
been looking for, and now I could see it. First cast up there was
Mm.
that 8.5, whatever that big one was, and we just proceeded to absolutely wear them out in a little bit. It was amazing how many bass were in such a small little area. But anyway, moving into the later part of that third period, really like the last 15 minutes of the tournament, I had left that area, tried to let it cool down. It seemed like after the first time that I fished that, you could only catch like three or four, and then everybody would get smart. They'd get wise. It wasn't that they weren't there; they were looking at my bait,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't matter what I threw, a D shad, a dead stick and a Cinco, and long since given up on that berserk. After you caught a few, you really had to let it sit, and everybody kind of regroup, forget about what you just done. You can pull back up there and catch a few more. So I strategically left it with about an hour left and came back. Sure enough, I caught two or three. That was right when Wheeler and I were kind of neck and neck, and I know Wheeler. He's a good friend of mine, and I studied him enough to know and fished against him now long enough. He's always got something in his back pocket for that last 45 minutes, half
Yeah.
hour. He is, if you
Mm-hmm.
watch and if you look back at his score tracker, he catches probably more than anybody else in the last 30 minutes. And it's because he's always got something,
Yeah. Up his
left
sleeve.
in the
Yeah.
tank. He's always got something. So I knew, and I told my camera guy, I said, this is not enough. We were ahead by, a scoreboard or so. And I said, this is not enough. We're going to have to catch them. And I slid around. I did an old TVA trick. I moved around and actually repositioned on that bluegill bed to give those fish an opportunity to see my bait from a totally different angle. That's
Mm-hmm.
a really good tip. If you've got a group of fish that you can't get to fire, typically you've already caught a bunch, but they're really wise. I don't know what that does to them, but it can completely reignite that entire school, get them really excited, And so I tried that. Generally, if that's going to happen, it's going to work on your first, call it 3 casts. And so we were getting down to the last, 2-3 minutes there. I made those casts, nothing bit. I said, uh-oh, I've got time for one more cast. Do I want to make that same cast where I know some fish are living, but they're educated, they don't necessarily want to bite, or do I want to just turn around and wing my berserk out here into, I'm not kidding you, it's a football field sized area of eelgrass. Not that I could cover all that in one cast, but I had zero idea where one was going to be, across that huge flat. And I said, you know what? This thing's meant to be. It's going to happen. I want to throw out here. May not come across one, but if I do, I feel like my odds of getting him to bite is really good. And I'll never forget the feeling, that roller coaster of emotion. Every, call it, minute and a half, my whole world would change.
Right.
And I remember as that berserk left my rod tip, I was starting to formulate my closing interview and my, give my congratulations to Wheeler there. He had just caught one. I needed one more scoreable, and I'll never forget, before the buzzbait ever hit the water, I thought, you know what, you've got time, like it can happen. And winding that thing in was just a roller coaster. I'm trying to come up with what I'm going to say, keep myself composed. Obviously, this is a dream that we've not just me, but my entire family, our lives have revolved around this for quite some time now. And so it's all, kind of rolling into this one moment. And to see that fish blow up on it, obviously I was, hyper focused on that buzzbait. And she actually came up. It was really shallow where I threw. She came up almost kind of like dolphin porpoised on it, but came at me. And I really thought that she had just pushed my buzzbait and didn't have it. I mean, just threw a bunch of slack in my line. If you go back and watch, you can actually, I don't set the hook. I start winding in real fast because I'm going to try to get my buzzbait in, pick my sinker up and make.
Well, that's what I thought that you had done. I thought that because I thought it missed it, and I thought you were just trying to get it back in to get it right back out there.
It's exactly what I was doing, and I made about 4 cranks and that rod bowed up. I was like, oh my gracious! Like I saw 3/4 of the bass when she bit my buzzbait. But she was coming with so much force, she just knocked 2 or 3 feet of slack in my line. That I'll never forget, like I want to say panic, but it was almost like calm. You hear, we were talking about veterans earlier. I'm a big history, kind of a war buff, and like to, follow that. And you always hear those veterans talk about, in that moment,
control chaos,
much more serious. It's life and death. Their adrenaline rushes to the point that it really slows everything down. And not that I didn't believe that by any means, but I had certainly never experienced that until that moment. And it, that fight I think lasted like maybe 4 or 5 seconds. It felt like 4 or 5 minutes. Like I can vividly remember every crank of the reel handle. And I made the conscious decision. I knew how big that fish was, and I knew I didn't have time to fight her. Like this was one of those, and you see me, I dropped my rod tip and literally grabbed the handle with my entire fist and just cranked on her. And I knew if she ever turned her head, it was going to cost an extra 3 or 4 seconds that I didn't have. And so we were just hoping and praying that fish had it good enough that when I boat flipped it, we would at least get it over the gunnel. And I actually managed to keep that fish off the carpet. I put a big old slit in my hand there, and but it was all good. There were no complaints by any means, and just a special moment. One of the coolest things about that, and I had no idea at the time, but now I'll call it 10 or 11 months, from that moment and all that happening. I've had literally, and I'm not exaggerating, this is not a fishtail, I had to have had thousands of people at this point. I had literally, it seemed like 50 or 75 just at the Classic a few days ago, explaining and telling me where they were and what they were doing during their celebration at that exact moment. Everybody, of course, is watching it live, and to me, that is so cool. I would have given weigh anything in the world for all of us to have been in that boat at that moment. But to know so many people from all walks of life, all across the country, probably even outside the country, we
Yeah.
all celebrated together there, and it was just it makes that moment so much more special.
Yeah.
Well,
Now,
during your moment, I mean, as a fisherman, you bring us in that moment. We live it through you, and so
yeah.
when all that was going down, it was just like on the edge of our seat. You know what I mean? And it is so true what you said about the vets. And I'm a vet myself, and it's controlled chaos. And it truly is. I mean, it just like you said, everything slows down.
Yep,
And then you let your instinct, your second nature kick in, and it's crazy, man. It truly is crazy.
it is.
But
But to go
mm,
back to your original question there, so did I know that I sealed it up? So what was interesting, and I'm kind of giving a little bit of the our production secrets away, but I'm sure everybody at this point's kind of seen the winning angler, whoever's in the lead when the buzzer goes off. We're always looking
hmm
at the camera guy. We're really intently
hmm
focused on, and we're not looking at the camera. We're looking at his eyes and his reaction
hmm
because he's got an earpiece in that he can hear what's going on in every camera boat.
Right.
And so when I flip that fish in, I immediately, I think that I've won it. I'm only, I forget,
Right.
13 ounces, a pound, whatever it was. I just needed a scoreable. And obviously this was a pretty nice one, about a 5.5. And so like I had that immediate rush of, okay, I've got it. And then I look up as I'm weighing the fish and I can see the panic look on the camera guy's face. That's
Because
when Wheeler's winding that fish
yeah,
in. And then you see this, like, I can't even explain the look on his face, but he didn't have to tell me a word. I knew whatever had just happened, it did not work
Right.
out for
Yeah. Yeah.
whoever that was, and you got it. He was giving me the thumbs up. And again, just the
Yeah.
amount of times that my body, my blood pressure rose and dropped and rose, and it just the excitement of it seemed like literally every 30 seconds, it was a whole nother kind of world and outcome, and
hmm
then we would flip flop. It would be back on top, and so it was one of those
hmm
moments that you truly, like, I have dreamed from. I mean, knee high to a grasshopper. This is what I've dreamed about, winning an event at that level, and for it to all happen the way that it did was just you literally you can't make that up.
yeah.
If
Yeah.
you told me
Yeah.
to write a fairy tale story, I'm not sure I could have put it in
So
that manner. However, I will tell you, I am ready. I'm ready to go into the last 15 or 20 minutes of a BPT event and have a 30-pound lead. I want to be able to
There you
breathe
go.
through one of these. The next
right,
one,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I want to win it by a landslide.
Now,
There you go.
now,
That was
did
one
it
of those
mean
that do
did
it
it
now.
did it mean any more to you? For me, it did, and because again, just like what Pappy was saying, is like we're living this experience
hmm
through you, and at the time of this, well, we've got to see, in which we talked about this before. I came up and I interviewed you after day two, and right before the bottom just fell out of it,
I remember it. I remember
and
it.
I had my nephew with me, and I told you this before. Uh, you and Justin Lucas. So if I tell like my nephew that I'm going and doing some media work for Bass or MLF, it doesn't to him. He doesn't decipher which one's which, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
just because he's just a little kid, and he's like, "So you're gonna see the person that has the green boat or the red boat?" And so
Oh
he
man.
and that right there, in which we've got a picture of you
Yeah, we
with
got a big
hmm
him.
group picture.
Yeah, and so
That was something else. Just kind of to really kind of step back a few days. It was again just a continuation of this roller coaster. I have a
Mm-hmm.
tremendously good practice. It's no secret. I'm really comfortable offshore TVA. I grew up. I've been doing it since we were lining two telephone poles up and throwing a marker buoy. So
Right.
that is my bread and butter. That is what I am probably the most knowledgeable about. The little intricacies and really really proficient at it. And so to have that event work out where it's a dual lake event and we get into practice and like the first day I find 25 schools and felt like I could have caught, you know, 30 or 40 pounds out of each one of them. Of course, it's always easier during the middle of the week. Everybody on the
Yeah.
TVA knows that. But I knew it was like, oh my gracious, I'm going to run away with this. And then I'm going to get to Nickajack and who knows what's going to happen there. Like
Right.
I only spent about 3.5 hours of practice on Nickajack. I really wanted to make sure that that I had enough. Chick is an interesting lake in that it's unbelievable the population density there, but they don't live in that many places. Like the schools they're all pretty well known about, and I was really worried that I think I had close to 40 schools by the end of practice. But I was worried I might only get to fish 5 or 6, and is that enough? Are they all going to fire? So I really spent a lot of my time over there on Chick. But I'll never forget my videographer Eli was of course traveling with me, and we didn't put this on camera, but it was just like I was laughing because I thought of every tournament, all the previous, I guess that would have been 4 BPT events. My practices were very poor. Like I kind of made something out of nothing in those events, and
Right.
and here we are going into an event that's a dual lake, and I feel like there is no way I'm going to get beat. There on the first leg of this one. So really cool, and going into that second day when I actually met y'all and your awesome nephew, I didn't know whether I wanted to win or get that auto bid into the championship or if I wanted that additional practice day. That's always kind of the strategy in this deal. It's like on a one lake event, it's sometimes an advantage because you're laying off your fish for a day or two. But most often, especially in the springtime, things change even in one day, and you give
Yeah.
these guys
Mm-hmm.
8 hours that you didn't get, and you are way behind the 8 ball. And
Yeah.
so I really didn't know. It was really about the middle of the second period where I said, all right, the heck with it. I'm fixing to burn it all down. I'm gonna catch everything I can catch, and let's just make this an AOY points deal. Let's make sure we get into the top 10, make us an extra little jingle there, and we'll just see what happens on the final day.
Yeah.
Had I not gotten, I think it was Lucas that got that
Yeah. The
auto
bit.
bid,
Yeah.
and he
Mm-hmm.
not caught that one. It was only by like a scorable or two. Had he
Right.
not caught that fish, I probably don't win that event. I don't have that day where I'm winging that buzzbait around and find that one, major bluegill bed or the bluegill bed that I caught the majority of my scorables on the championship round. So again, it's cliche. You hear this all the time, but it was the series of events that took place that week. It was really kind of meant to be from the very get go. Like
Yeah.
everything happened, even though I didn't realize it or see it at the time. It was all for the right reasons, and without one thing here and there happening, I probably don't win that event. So,
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
fascinating and neat to kind of take a step back now that hindsight, 2020, to know how that all worked out. And again, it was not necessarily how I thought I needed it to work out. So,
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. Well, I want to. I enjoy. I mean, I enjoy talking to you, and I enjoy the story, and especially with it being on our home lakes that happened. It's just really exciting, and then to know that here, just a couple of weeks ago, the Tennessee state record happened to come out of the area that somebody may have won a tournament out of, and
I've heard that rumor. It's I'd be lying to you if I said I hadn't had a little twitch wanting to get back over there. It's for a couple years now. I'm a Tennessee River guy, but I'm on the very lower end. So I'm on the call it Kentucky Lake to Gunnersville is primarily where I spend my time, and um, Nickajack is one that, I've heard about it. I've known about it for a couple years. I had not previously gone over, but everybody that I talked to, even a few years prior to that BPT, everybody was saying, please, man, come over here, get you some of this, but please don't post and don't talk about
Yeah.
it. This is our little secret. I'm gonna say between that BPT win and the new state record, it's gonna be mighty busy at the Nickajack.
I'll just say this: after y'all left and that the tournament was over with, that next week, I guarantee you there was not a buzz bait or a scrounger head in any bait shops. Because everybody was on Nickajack throwing a scrounger head and a buzz bait.
Absolutely, man. I tell you, what's crazy is the buzzbait for me last year, and a lot of it was really the timing of our events and where we were. But excuse me, the Berserk was a major player. I'm gonna say it caught outside of my scope periods. It probably caught 60 or 70% of the scorables that I weighed in last year, whether it be on the little bitty 1/8 ounce berserk or even that 3/8 that I threw both at SAG and there at Nickajack. I don't know. It was just kind of the year of the buzzbait. I've always obviously buzzbait's my favorite top water. I love chunking and winding, covering a ton of water, and there's not a better top water to do that. And it's a very versatile bait. But whether we were at even outside of the BPT, like I fished the All American, I think I finished fifth or sixth there. I was skipping that berserk up under docks, kind of walkways under docks, and catching again fish that were primarily feeding on bluegill. And so it just seemed like last year was kind of the year for the buzzbait, and it was cool. Again, kind of following up with a lot of people that hadn't thrown a buzzbait in many years and picked one back up last year and caught a ton of fish on it. So it was cool to kind of be somewhat of the reason of kind of the resurgence of the buzzer. I've always been fond of it, and it was certainly fun to me last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we just got back from Knoxville,
Yep.
seeing the Super Bowl of Bassmasters, and I'm telling you this, I'm excited for the end of April. I don't know about you, but we're excited about it. I'm ready to see what Red Crest holds, and because it never. I I say this to the fact of I love Bassmasters and I love the classic. I love the fact of being able to see the fish being weighed in and all that. I think that Bass has the advantage over that part with being fan friendly, but the format for Red Crest of being able, you bring your best, I'll bring my best, we'll go out and we throw heavy punches all day long, and may the best person win. I love that's my kind of fishing style because um, just going out there and I can just imagine, like when Edwin won it and he just caught for like 25 minutes, had cast after cast after cast of nothing but, I mean, of scorables, and he had to. I remember that, like when he had the fish drop and hit the carpet and had to take the 2 minute penalty, and he said, "Thank you, I get to rest." you know
Yep.
that,
You
and
cannot replicate the
mm-mm,
intensity. As professional anglers, obviously it is partly our job to catch bass, but it's also very much a part to keep this entertaining, keep it.
yeah,
Hmm.
Whether it be the stress level of the cut line or you're leading by 15 pounds or whatever that is, it's really it's up to us to, I don't want to say create that, but really portray whatever is happening, and our
right,
format enables us. We are who we are. Like we don't have to replicate or make this up. There is
Yeah.
drama whether you aren't catching them or you're way ahead of everybody. There is always, that intensity level with it. You can never be far enough ahead. I can't tell you how many times last year I got a little complacent, a little comfortable with the cut line, and you give yourself 30 minutes without getting a bite, and buddy, you're sweating it again.
Oh,
Like
I can
it's
imagine.
holy smokes, here
Yeah.
it comes,
Mm.
Yeah.
and Red Crest is obviously no exception. Obviously we're going to have it there on Table Rock, have a great facility. With the Branson Springfield area, collaborating with us, and it's going to be a ton of stuff to have there, for the viewers and everybody that's coming. And the fishing is going to be absolutely unbelievable. Table Rock always is. December to August, it doesn't matter. Like you can go there 12 months out of the year, and there are going to be fish
Yeah.
there.
Well,
That time of the year is a really kind of any time of the year that is going to be wide open. We could be flipping a flooded Table Rock, flipping bushes and that sort of thing, or they could be out over 100 feet of water,
yeah.
and we've really got to utilize our scope period. So I think it's going to be a great venue. It's going to be a great time, even for the viewers and the fans that are coming to the Branson area. It's going to be a lot going on, and I wouldn't want to miss it.
No, and that's the thing is I mean, for that area, very well possibly you could be going there at the perfect time with the spawn and everything
Yep.
like that. I mean, because I know here that we're on the cusp. I mean, we definitely have some
Mm.
pre-spawners. I think that we may have actually had some early spawners actually hit just from being out on the water and seeing what I've been able to see. But I mean, I'm excited for you. I mean, I think uh, I because again, y'all bring a different type of excitement,
Mm-hmm.
and because you may come up on a school of 50 2 pounders and y'all are able to pick them clean, and and I tell people all the time, would you rather go out and catch 100 fish that may be 1 pounders, or go out and maybe catch one that's 4 or 5 pounder? You know,
Yep.
I mean, for me, I'd rather just go out there and just blister some fish. It don't matter what size they are. Is that yank on the other end of that line? That's the addiction?
That's what it's all about. And what's really interesting is, we MLF has done a great job with their minimum scorables. When you're fishing for a 2 pounder, you're fishing for a 4 and 5 pounder. Most fisheries in most places, most times of the year, the same place that and generally the same bait. Not always. There's exceptions, of course, but a lot of times you're winding a chatterbait around, and you're going to catch a 2 pounder on this point and a 6 pounder on that boat dock, and a 4 pounder on this lay down. But it's fun with every fish counts. Again, kind of the sky's the limit. Every time we all kind of get together at the meeting, pre-tournament meeting, and everybody's guessing what are the weights. What's the cut line? What's it going to take to get the auto bid? We're all talking amongst ourselves. You can't take any of that. Like I promise you, it'll be 15 to 25 pounds heavier than what anybody says. It
Yeah.
always is, regardless of how bad the fish has been. These guys are unbelievable. They're gonna find what's out there, and they're gonna find a way to generate a lot of bites. But what's really cool with our 2 pound minimum is again, we're not you're not forced to drag a shaky head around for a 12-inch spotted bass. Like, you're
Yeah.
oftentimes, now we're going to catch a lot of those, and there are times that we need to drag a net or a shaky head around and generate bites. But oftentimes, if you watch our tournament, especially as you kind of proceed through the tournament, these guys are doing exactly what they would do to catch the biggest five. But that every fish counts format and the catch, weigh, release, it's really, I truly believe this is the future of tournament fishing and kind of where we're all headed. This is
Yeah.
quickly going to start trickling down, different levels
Yeah.
of tournament bass fishing.
Well, we got a question from Brian that says, when with being limited on forward facing sonar, when do you decide to use your forward facing sonar for the period?
So that's a great question, and it really, like most, answers in bass fishing, none of this is kind of concrete or set in stone. A lot of it has to do with the fishery and kind of what's going on with that particular pattern. If it's a shad spawn, now our events always start, well after daylight, and so the shad spawn is usually one of those. It's kind of a dying pattern by the time the event starts. But let's say it's a shad spawn, and I'm catching them, on a jerk bait. Once those fish start to kind of sink back down and everything settles, I know I'm going to have to do that in my first period. Whereas if it's let's call it they're on isolated cover, let's say brush piles on points. Well, generally it's good to let the sun get up, let those fish kind of congregate, get tight to the cover. You're going to be way more efficient. I only need to make one or two casts. I know right where he or she's going to be, and I can run to the next one. In that situation, I might wait to the second or even the third period. So it really kind of depends. Although it's interesting to see the vast majority of us will do it in the first period, and
Yeah.
there's a couple different reasons for that. One, obviously, you want to try to be the first to run through an area and kind of catch the most gullible, the easiest fish, and that's certainly one part to it. But honestly, we all know at this point we're the most efficient with forward facing, and in general, fish, there's always a feeding window. Fish will generally, regardless of the lake or the time of the year, they're going to feed pretty heavy right there at daylight for the first, call it 2 or 3 hours. And so
Yeah.
in general, you kind of want to be the most efficient when the bass are the most fired up, and you feel like you can, turn that fish into a catch. You want to be able to know where he's at and be able to put your bait on it. So it's, multifaceted answer, but in general, that's why you see the majority of us utilize it in the first period. It's because that's generally when you can rack up the most weight. They're just the easiest to catch.
Right. Now, you had mentioned something that when we were talking about Nickajack, that you done a Tennessee River deal to where you reposition the boat. So how important is it to get that right position, and how do you determine what that position is to have to for your boat position to be able to throw at a target? Let's do it on like as because as a let's say like on the Tennessee River with it, let's say, and we have current on the Tennessee River, because there's a difference in between having current and not having current on the Tennessee River. So let's say that you have perfect scenario of you got good current coming into or coming down the Tennessee River, and it don't have to be Nickajack or whatever. It could just be
Right, right.
period. But
Yep.
so how do you
So
determine that?
so if I have current, my first cast is generally going to be I'm going to position my boat downstream, and I'm going to cast directly upstream past the school. Work my bait back into, more or less, you're going to be working it into their head. They're all going to be facing, upstream. Almost all are going to be facing that way. The last thing that I want to do is throw back downstream and reel it through their tail. If
Yeah.
anybody, I'm sure most of our listeners have gotten their bait a little too close to a fish on forward facing to his tail. They never react in a positive manner. So that's first and foremost. But I'll give you a cool little tip, and somebody, I'm probably going to get a little hate mail on this, but that's all right. I again will almost always start downstream, throwing upstream. But when they're
Mm-hmm.
either I've caught a few and I need to reignite the school, or if the school won't fire, to begin with, I will actually position my boat shallower, or at the very least as deep as that school or that little group of fish. I really want to prevent from dragging those fish out any deeper than where they're positioned. So if I know they're in 12 feet of water, I want to make sure and position my boat somewhere in 12 feet or less. I don't mind even if it's up there in 2 or 3 feet of water. And you say, well, why
Yeah.
is that important? Why does that matter? So if you've got a group of fish that's utilizing a small little area, when your bait gets inside of that zone and one bites it, it ignites that entire school. They all know, Frank over there, he got him a piece. Like I don't know what's going on. He's acting weird, but let's see what all that fuss is
Yeah.
about. And you'll see on
Right.
your forward facing, and even prior to having it, you're going to see those fish. They'll oftentimes come all the way to the boat where you can visually see them with your eyes sometimes. What happens if you're sitting out over deeper water than where they're positioned? When they come up and see the boat and turn and start easing back down, they generally don't want to go any deeper than where they were originally. If you're out over the river channel or significantly deeper water, they'll just go out there at that same depth they were sitting and just suspend. And a suspended bass is the hardest bass
Yeah.
to catch, especially if some of his buddies have already been caught and he's seen the boat, he knows what's happening, and is kind of in that nervous, kind of mood. So if
Yeah.
you'll position your boat shallower, when that fish sees the boat, turns around, he'll just go straight back to the bottom, somewhere between you and the original spot that you were catching. So it
That's
makes it
interesting.
very easy to keep that fish ignited. I say very much easier than if he's suspended out, 15 over 25. I've really only
Yeah.
got a couple baits that I can throw at that fish. If he's now gone to the bottom in 6 feet, but he's sitting on the bottom, say I was catching him on a swim bait or a crankbait or whatever it may be, now I can show him a totally new bait and presentation, whether
That
it be a
makes a lot of
jig, a
sense.
worm, something that's on the
Yeah.
bottom, and oftentimes moving much slower.
I like
So
it.
again, that's an old TVA tactic that a lot of people probably wished I wouldn't have just said, but it's a cool little trick that
Yeah.
that has gotten me a lot more bites over the years.
Well,
Right.
and I also want to talk to you about, because you done some guiding for a while, um, and so let's say you're going to a lake that you have never been, because I was talking to you, and and how you done guiding was very interesting to me, because you really wasn't guiding just on one. Usually, a guide would be on one specific lake. You actually guided all over, and so I mean, and that kind of helped as well to get you to where you're at. But let's say you're going to a lake that you have never been to. How has that guiding set you up to be able to kind of clear out dead water or something like that?
Absolutely. So yeah, what I did, again, as I mentioned, and I'm sure most everybody already knows, this is where I'm at is where I have worked towards ever since I was little bitty guy, and way before I even knew what this all involved, and so every kind of step that I made, I had my key focus was how to prepare myself for the Elite Series, the Bass Pro Tour, the old FLW Tour, whatever it was going to be when I got there. How could I be the most prepared? And I knew, staying on the water as much as possible was the best way to get me to that point. But it's not always doesn't do you a whole lot of good to fish the same
Yeah.
lake all the time. That lake has its own set of characteristics and kind of patterns that some may or may not relate to any other body of water in the country. So what I did is, I knew the best way to keep me on the water was to start guiding. but I didn't want to just do it here on Kentucky Lake. So I would book myself, call it 2 to 4 days on a body of water. Might be with the same person, might not be, but I would spend those 3 or 4 days. Now the customers didn't always know this, but I would learn that lake. I mean, from the first day I got there, we're gonna develop whatever the pattern is, and sometimes that client would have a specific thing, that they were wanting to learn. And so I would try to schedule that on a lake where I felt like that pattern was happening. But
Right.
ultimately, when I got on that body of water, I had no idea what was really going on. So it always kept me in practice mode, so to speak. Like, even though I've got somebody standing over my shoulder, you know, probably anxious, waiting to get a bite, it was I had that pressure of knowing I needed to make it happen today, and I was always fair with my clients. If we had a day where it was, man, I just never got us around them, I didn't put my put my client in a position to catch them or learn whatever it was that we set out to, then I would be fair. We would reschedule and do. But over, call it a 6 or 7, 8 year period, I really honed my skills at quickly being able to, dissect a body of water. I didn't fish. I tried to stay in. I had probably 10 or 12 lakes that I fished the majority of the time, between northern Alabama, and all across Tennessee, some up in Kentucky. But I would never book more than 2 or 3 days on a particular lake, and then it might be 3 or 4 weeks before I would circle back and come back to that place. And
Right.
of course, at that point, everything is reset. It's like showing up to a brand new body of water again, and
Right.
and so it really honed my skills in quickly dissecting a body of water, figuring out, eliminating the dead water, finding the productive, and doing that under pressure. It's one thing to go out on a Saturday by yourself. Nobody's going to know if you catch them or not, or when you caught them, and how long it was in between bites.
Right.
So
Right.
it's one thing to do that, and that's certainly, any time on the water is good time on the water. But I really feel like it ratcheted up my learning process, as opposed to just, putting in here 6 days a week out of Paris Landing. I was hustling all across, again, mostly Tennessee, northern Alabama, some up in Kentucky, but I was always on the run, and having to stay in that search mode.
Yeah.
And that's something that, again, whether you're fishing the same body of water every weekend, or any of your days off, or maybe you've got 2 or 3 lakes to choose from, if you can come in it with an open mind, not these preconceived notions that, man, I burned them down on this point last weekend. Well, that was 5 or 6, 7 days ago. We've had
Right.
3 weather changes. The water's come up 6 inches. Like, so much has changed, even in just a couple day window, that
Yeah.
oftentimes a weekend angler, and hey, I catch myself doing this all the time. I'm trying to fish history. I'm fishing what was good last weekend and where I got bites. And it oftentimes takes you, half of the day, 3/4 of your day, to kind of go through all that to get to the point and say, okay, they're not doing this. We've got to go find something else. And usually, once you kind of, got that through your mind, and process that, usually doesn't take you very long to figure it out. Usually, it's kind of staring you right in the face. You're just ignoring it because you
Right.
had success, previously somewhere else.
So, do you
So I got
find?
I got a question on you. You said something that kind of piqued something for me. You said that you would change lakes and you would wait to get back around to it 2 or 3 days. So do you think that these guides that are I guess at a home lake and then fishing it day in and day out, maybe they're fishing 5 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever, with clients or whatever, do you think that that's hurting the fishery?
I mean, in today's age, I don't know that I want to say it's hurting the fishery, because at this point, if that guide is not utilizing that pattern or location, somebody else
Mm-hmm.
probably is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? I mean, is it? What was it easier on certain areas that I had? Just speaking, specifically from my history, it was
Mm-hmm.
a lot easier. Let's say in the late summer period. That's always a period where things stabilize. Fishing's not at its greatest, but it's fairly consistent for a long period of time.
Yeah.
If I had a group of fish, say here on the south of Paris Landing, and if I got it on that thing 4 or 5 times in a row, 4 or 5 days in a row, I'd probably pressure that group to the point that they would either relocate or just altogether stop biting. I would again fish 2 or 3 days. I might stop and catch a few out of that group, utilize it to teach someone whatever we wanted to learn. And then those fish may or may not, they're at least not getting pressure from me. Not to say that they aren't from somebody else,
Yeah.
but when I would show back up with a new client and those fish were still there, they were usually fairly fresh. Like it was not used water at that point. It was
Yeah.
it was still
Yeah.
fairly fresh, and oftentimes I would roll up to that area and those fish would be gone, and I would relocate that group wherever they moved, whatever had happened. In that time frame that I was gone, I would try to catch up wherever they went, and so
Yeah.
I see both sides of it. We
Mm-hmm.
we put a way more pressure on every body of water than what
Right.
we ever have. Our weekend angler is so much better than even most of the professionals 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Of that
Yeah.
time, and the reason, excuse me, is because of things just like this podcast. We have so many resources, at our disposal, just like that little tip I gave a minute ago on boat angle and
Mm-hmm.
positioning. It took me 10,000 hours. I don't really know, but hours,
Right.
days upon days to figure that
Right.
out, kind
Yeah.
of on my own. Whereas someone might be 14, 15 years old, only spend a handful of days out offshore ledge fishing, and now they know that. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
promise you, they'll catch more bass because of that. So we all have so much more information at our fingertips. It's making us all very, very good and so
Yeah.
much more efficient. And so fishing pressure is certainly it's a real thing now. We always talked about it back in the day, but it's so much more pronounced and kind of prolific in today's
Mm-hmm.
world than what it ever has been. And I don't mean that
Yeah.
in a negative way. I'm
No.
super
Yeah.
happy that everybody has these. The podcast and videos, all of YouTube, all the
Yeah.
resources. It's a great thing, and it's made me a better angler. I mean,
Right.
as soon as I
Right.
get off this podcast while I'm eating dinner, I assure you, I'll have some sort of fishing YouTube, something going about fishing. Like that's just I
Yeah.
may listen to a 30-minute video and pick up something that I heard in a 30-second clip, but I'll take it with me forever. So
Yeah.
it's a great
Yeah.
thing, but pressure is it's certainly we are seeing the effects of that more now than ever.
We got another
I agree.
question. It says, on a highly pressured body of water, do bass move a long distance or do they generally stay close to that area?
Great
So it all
question.
depends on the body of water and how that. Let me see how to best. How many ambush points does that body of water have? So let's take a. Let's not talk about Table Rock because I'm off limits there. Let's take a Dale Hollow. All right. So if they're wanting to be on long tapering flat points, there's only X amount of those. I've only spent a
Right.
couple days on Dale Hollow. I don't really know it that well, but there's only X amount of that. So when we put pressure on this one, long tapering point, they may have to swim a mile and a half to get to the next one. If that's just what they're dead set, the forage that they're feeding on in that given moment, that's where they are and what they're relating to. They'll have to swim a long way to get to it. If you take Kentucky Lake, for example, and bass, we've developed a pattern that they're on the downstream side of every creek channel where it dumps into the river, you're only going to have to go a quarter, maybe a half a mile on either side of the river in most sections of Kentucky Lake, and you can find a brand new school, or maybe even
Right.
the same school that's just relocated to that. So it's all really based on the fishery and what it has, available to the fish. I've seen places, the Great Lakes, they will swim miles. Like, it is incomprehensible how far those fish will swim. You take Reelfoot Lake, which is another lake that I grew up on, real swampy, created by the earthquakes in 1811, 1812. Those fish, the lake's not very big to begin with, but of that, if they want to live on a cypress tree in 2 to 3 feet of water, they've got hundreds of them within,
Right.
a 200-acre area. I mean, there's any number of places that they can live. So it's really based on the fishery and kind of what the fish have available to them.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting thing and I'm glad you said that, how fish will relocate. They could swim 100 yards, or they could swim miles away. One time, Colin and I had a conversation about, I'm a big time avid hunter as well, and I look at terrain a lot. I mean, I go and I do a lot of pre-mapping and everything, it's also made me a better fisherman as well, because I can look at a certain terrain, and how it comes down into the lake, river, whatever. Deer act the same way as fish. You put a lot of pressure on them. And it could be a slight adjustment, or it could be a major adjustment from zero to. I mean, it's been tracked that deer will move 20 miles away just to get out of the pressure, or they won't move at all. They'll just hunker down and not even move. And only feed at certain times, and usually that's at night, or early morning. And that has helped me to be a better fisherman, because I understand nature a lot better, because they act a lot. It's
Right.
crazy about how they act a lot alike, deer and fish. And
Yep, and I'll take it even a step further. So it kind of reminds me of something that I used to always do on most of my guiding trips. And again, I don't
Mhm.
guide any longer, just time
Right,
issue there. But back when I was doing it, most all of my trips were educational in some sense. Hey
right.
Jake, I really want to learn. What bass look like on side imaging, offshore
Hmm.
schools, or I really need to learn, pre-spawn, mag draft, whatever it is. A lot of times we would have something in particular that we were trying to learn, and who knows how many of these trips I did. I used to
Hmm.
seem like 3 or 4 a week. I want to learn offshore structure fishing. What am I looking for? Let's start at the
Right.
basics. I'm a guy from the Ohio River. I've never casted out in the middle. Whatever
Hmm.
their background was, and so
I didn't know there
Right.
was fish in Ohio River.
well, there's not, but guys still like to fish there for some reason. But emphasis on the fish, not the catching. But uh, but
Right. Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
I used to always take on the LBL side, the east side of Kentucky Lake. It's fairly hilly and a lot of topographic changes. So I
Right.
had an old
Hmm.
paper map, topo map of the LBL over there, and I would take them to a couple
Hmm.
certain little stretches where we could look at a topographic map and look up and see that contour change, at that hillside, and how this little valley runs through here, makes a little corner.
Yep.
I wanted them to be able to visually see that with their eyes, because it is the exact same thing underwater. When we look
Yeah.
at our
Yep.
topographic maps, our lake masters or sea maps, whichever interface that you use, they're all
Hmm.
showing you the topographic change, the contour changes, which you can see on dry land with a
Yep.
regular old school topo map. And
Yeah.
it helped those guys so much. It really
Hmm.
helped to to understand that. Once they could see it, even just for a few minutes on dry land, now when we see this break line out here and we see this one little corner and little steep spot, we know what that looks like. We can
Yep.
imagine
Yeah.
that in our head.
Yep.
And that was something
Yep.
that just kind of brought that up when you said that.
Yeah.
But absolutely, deer and nature in general. You know, I waterfowl guided for many years as well. At the same time, I was doing the fish and the similarities in how those how waterfowl relates to hunting pressure is just almost exactly like what we see in fishing pressure. So it's very nature finds a way to adapt and change to their circumstances or their environmental changes in a very similar way, whether they've got 4 legs or a wing or fins. They all act
Yeah.
very similar.
Yep.
Well, see, and
Yep.
it's
Yep.
and it's funny that you say that. Well, because Pappy and I, we were in Kentucky delivering Little Debbie's, actually in Harlan, Kentucky, coming through the mountains, and so, and I really never put 2 and 2 together with seeing what's above you to see what's down below.
Mhm.
But after he had said that, like, cause I've got this Lawrance, and I was with the C maps. I'm able to put the satellite imaging on there, and that's really, for me, it's helped me because I've been able to use that. I can look down the river and be able to see. All right, here's this got this little fingerling that's coming down to the water, and then I can see it on the mapping for the water and stuff like that to where that's been able to help me as well. So with putting that satellite imaging on it, instead of it just showing brown around the water, it's showing actually what's going on with it, and you can see terrain and stuff.
Correct.
So
Correct.
we got Jerry Brusso says, does Jake use Sonic Coat? Jerry, it's kind of funny that you say that because
Yep.
Jake and I were talking about it when right before we went live, and I told him I have got to get some sent to him, and
It's coming.
so we're going to be able to get feedback from Jake on the Sonic Coat, and hopefully I'll get a message after he holds up a trophy, and I'll just say a table rock, that
Hey, that'd be all right.
Yeah,
That'd get our season back on track right
Yep,
there.
I'm telling you. And he also has another question that says, does Jake ever look at the feeding table and try to use his forward facing during that period?
You know, that's something that I'm still utilizing, or I shouldn't say utilizing, learning to utilize rather. Here's what I'm trying to do is I am. How's the best way to put this in a very short form? I could talk about that for a while, but yes and no. So I am utilizing it on a day-to-day basis to try to check its accuracy with my success rate, if that makes sense. But the problem with that is regardless of what body of water, regardless of the conditions like weather, water conditions, all the outside factors that are involved with, feeding windows, they're always biting something somewhere on every body of water. And so it's yes and no. I'm gaining more confidence with it. I'm starting to see, some consistency there. But there again, it's all about what's happening in your area and kind of, let me put this for example. Like if we have a thunderstorm roll in and I'm catching them on my berserk in water willow grass. I'm just making something up here. Like I'm going to be real leery. Those fish are going to be the most affected by that lightning storm and thunder. Whereas if you've got on the same body of water on the lower end of the lake, if you've got some fish that are out floating on bait or suspended rather in bait, over 100 feet of water and they're in the 15 to 35, depth water column, those fish are going to be way more apt to bite under those
Right.
same circumstances. So yes and no. I kind of take that, but with a little bit of weight right now. Like I don't go all in just because it says this is the time that they're going to be feeding the most.
Yeah. Well,
Right, right.
we've had you on for over an hour, and we don't want to hold you up too much longer. But we got a couple more questions. Um, First question that I wanted to ask you is there a bait from your sponsors that you're excited about that has maybe just come out, or maybe that you're going to be able to utilize this year that the general public can be able to use?
Absolutely. So it's funny. I'm looking at it, but it's way across the room here. I hate to, and I'm honestly at the same time like I was fixing to jump up as you were, asking that and go get it. I'm not really sure I'm supposed to. I think we're still like 3 or 4 or 5 days out from releasing this. I'm actually going to go out on the lake tomorrow and get some more content. But yes, absolutely. So we have a couple different things. We're always, working on something. For anybody that doesn't know, I am the bait tinkerer. Like I am always, my mentality has always been, I can't necessarily, nor do I even want to try to outfish you on the same jig. Like
Yeah.
you can probably cast about as well as I can. You know when to drag it, when to hop it, when to swim it, when to dead stick it. I've always had way more confidence when I'm ahead of the curve. Whether it be a bait, a technique, a line. Like I'm a gear gizmo. Like I'm all about it, and I spend. Oh goodness! I hope my wife's not listening in the other room. I spend way too much money on baits that whether they be prototyping and it doesn't work, or some crazy JDM glob of who knows what that I try 1 or 2 times and throw in a tub and never utilize again. But yeah, so I'm gonna put a little sneak peek and I'm gonna ask for forgiveness later. And hope they don't get too upset at me. But I have some exclusive colors in the hinge minnow. It's going to be exclusive to Sportsman's Warehouse, and they are some really, really cool, kind of different. Some of them aren't going to fit every body of water, but they are more of, some of them aren't, but a couple are like niche colors that I came to Yamamoto, in the process of building the hinge and prototyping and said, look, I really want this color, and I'm going to refrain from getting too much detail
Right.
just
That's
yet.
all you got to
But y'all
say.
stick with me.
Yeah,
Here in the
yeah.
next couple of days, we're going to be able to let the whole cat out of the bag. But
Yeah.
I've got some really cool and different minnow colors. We've all kind of
Well,
stayed in that same, call it 3 or 4 shades of minnows, and I have done that, but we have got some that are a little out there, and I like them. They catch them. Now again, they're kind of niche. Some of them, a couple, are kind of more smallmouth spotted bass related. If you're a pure largemouth guy, may or may not fit you, but it's a color or a couple colors that you just we don't have on the market yet, and we need it. So
Yeah.
absolutely, you'll be seeing that here in the next, call it in the next week or so, maybe even a few days, few days
Yeah.
from now.
So, guys,
well,
in the
I got one
description.
more. Hold on. I got one more question before we,
Okay.
and it ain't gonna take but just a second. We all know that Dylan Nutt won the 2026 Bassmaster Classic, and he used a prototype bait that he
It,
said that he really couldn't say to. I mean, he gave a little bit of description, but do you think that other than the other factors, do you think that might have been an edge?
It's unfair for me to say that it is or wasn't. Dylan's been a great fisherman long
Mm-hmm.
prior, long before they've been working on that bait. Did it
Mm-hmm.
give a new look? Did it have a different role? Something that the fish haven't seen? It's not fair for me to say because I don't know what it
Yeah.
is and haven't seen it. Um, but I feel like with more fishing pressure and again when I say that it's not just more boats on the lake. What's really creating this scenario, if we'll call it that,
Right.
is that we're all getting so good. I mean, there's always been a lot of boats on the lake, but I hate to say
Yeah.
it, but a percentage of those guys were just they were out there to have a good time. If we got a bite, great. If we don't, hey, we've had fun and enjoyed the outdoors, and we'll probably come back tomorrow, and maybe we'll try somewhere else. But it
Yeah.
wasn't this techie high end, and I don't even say high end, but I just mean in mental capacity of like know how and fundamental knowledge.
Right.
It's just so much more of that now. New baits
Mm-hmm.
do you tend to have an advantage with that, and
Yeah.
the big misconception is these pros they always have a bait that we don't have or a thing, and you will see that from time to time. I was very fortunate to get on the very front end and probably really messed up, if I'm being honest, in not fishing more tournaments sooner. I came across the minnow craze very early, like in 21 or so. It's been 4 or 5 years now that I've been throwing it. Probably 2 or maybe even 3 years prior to kind of everybody else really knowing what's happening. So
Yeah.
I just decided to keep it quiet. I was guiding. It really allowed me in my guide trips to more or less bail myself out. Like I'd go do other things, and if they wouldn't bite anything else, I could pick up a minnow and load the boat pretty quick. And it
Right.
was, if
Right.
you think they will bite a minnow now, holy smokes! If you shared a boat with me 4 or 5 years ago, it literally was the silliest thing I've ever seen, and hope to see that again, but don't know that I ever will. I mean, it truly
Right.
was the number of you know 70 to 140, 50 fish days that we had back then really kind of wasn't fair. And I took full. I didn't really take that in the way that I should have in that moment, but
Right.
hey, it's all part of it, and I'm so glad that again everybody else gets to experience that. The minnow fishing is, I don't care, forward facing has made the jig headed minnow, strolling a minnow, pinging a minnow, whatever you want to call it. It has made it a powerhouse of a technique right now. But I assure you, even without forward facing, had forward facing never been invented, you would still have tournaments get won. Not to the degree that it is, because again, it's a very slow technique. It's not something you can cover a lot of water. It does help exponentially the fact that I know he's 72 feet at 1 o'clock. Like I can put my bait where
Right.
it needs to be. But my old
Yeah.
fishing partner Monty has absolutely, and a lot of guys back when we were fishing team events, him and I together, probably thought that I was catching the majority of those bass, and I did. I caught my fair share, but Monty caught more out of the back of my boat, blindly casting a minnow, than what most people will catch on forward facing. Like it was unreal. I'm up here
Yeah.
looking at him and throwing it, and he's still weighing 2 or 3 in by just blindly casting it around. It was amazing.
Colin
Yeah.
knows all about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
Yeah.
you can definitely do it whether you're pond fishing, bank
Mhm.
fishing, or from a kayak. You do not need forward facing. However, it does. I will tell you, it does help if you have a sense of kind of where one's going to be. Like, say
Right.
you swim it down a dock, or there's a rocky point or down a riprap bank, places where they're high percentage. There should be a fish in this general area. It
Right.
definitely does help.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure. Well, we got two more questions, and then we're gonna let you go, brother. Um, it says biggest bass, what lake, what bait? Can you do your personal and then biggest bass that a client has caught with you?
Okay. So this is really well. He's not a client. The biggest bass that I've ever had caught in my boat that I didn't catch was actually my father. It was back in my guiding days, but I would, from time to time, once or twice a month, him and I would get together and spend the day just goofing off and having fun. He
Mm-hmm.
actually caught an 11-2, 11-4, or
Oh
low
wow.
11, in
Yeah.
the mouth of Big Sandy right here on Kentucky Lake on a spinner bait in March. And crazy thing is that fish was it was really cold. And that fish bit. He leaned into it, and we caught a lot of catfish, a lot of drum, and a lot of bass that day. But for whatever reason, we caught a lot of, I hate to say it, but like trash fish, not what we're
Right.
targeting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
bass.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he leaned back into that thing on that spinner bait, and that rod just doubled over and sat there. He said, don't worry about it. It was very evident. This was a big fish of some sort. But he said, don't worry about it. It's a drum. And just literally started winding it, just cranking it in. And that thing got about 10 feet from the boat and came up, and it looked like Jaws. I mean, it
I
Mm,
looked like
bet.
my
mm,
whole
mm,
head could fit in his mouth. Of
mm.
course, we all freaked out and went crazy. It was a really cool moment, and certainly the biggest bass that he's ever caught. I've had several, uh, call it 2 or 3 10-pounders caught. Not myself, but another client. Actually, two of them were from the same client, and a couple 9-pounders. The biggest that I have personally caught was an 11-3. Caught it on a minnow down at kind of like a watershed lake. It's
Right.
the public lake, but it's 500 or 600 acres, a smaller place. I'll if I said the name of it, I would be more than happy to, but I'm afraid I'd get death threats here in the next few days if I let that out. But I
Yeah.
have caught, obviously, that one was on forward facing. But I've caught a number of 10-pounders. I say a number, like I've caught 3 over 10 without forward facing, two of which here on Kentucky Lake, and another one on, I guess that'd have been Pickwick. I say that one at Pickwick was a 10-pounder. It weighed 9.99. So I'm
Yeah.
just gonna go ahead and call that one a 10.
Round
But
it
y'all
up.
go y'all gonna have to give me that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Well,
I will.
But
Yeah. We'll
anyway,
definitely give it to you.
I caught that second biggest one that I caught weighed 10-12 out here on Kentucky Lake. Oddly enough, it's only about a half a mile from where my father had caught that fish, probably a year prior, maybe 2 years prior. And it was
Mhm.
I've been super fortunate to land on some pretty unbelievable. Like, if I told some of these stories, you'd probably shake your head and think, it sounds like a fish story kind of deal. Like, I have spent some time out here, and you have to do that to run into these kind of freak schools that we find from time to time.
Mhm.
And it usually takes a certain, current flow, and everything has to be right. But my uncle and um, I was fishing with him when I caught that 10-12, and it was the most unbelievable school big ones. Every single time your rattle trap hit the water, it seemed like a 4 to 6 pounder would eat it, and we were losing quite a few of them. They were really, really shallow, and so as soon as you would hook them, they'd come up, start jumping and somersaulting, going crazy. And those treble hook baits, making a long cast, you're bound to lose some when they're that big. And I'll never forget, I threw up there and I hooked one, buddy. I still to this day don't know how big this fish was. I couldn't do anything with it. One of those came up, jumped way out there, and threw my rattle trap. And I told Peter, my uncle, I said, "This is crazy. Why are we? They're biting whatever we throw in there. Why are we throwing a treble hook bait? Like, they'll bite whatever. Let's throw a single hook where we can catch them. We'll
Yeah.
get them in the boat." And I reeled that rattle trap in, and I put it up and picked a spinner bait up, and it hit the water. I engaged the reel handle, and a 10-12 ate it. And of course, I got it in, boated it. And I thought, you big dummy. Like, if you'd have thrown that spinner bait in the cast this morning, you'd have had two great big ones. So it's just, but when you're catching one every single, or at least hooking one
Yeah.
every single time your trap hits the water, it's hard to put it down. And they were all big in that
Yeah.
school. So really kind of a fun cool story. I'll never forget that. I've caught goodness, thousands of bass at this point, and quite a few big ones. But that
Yeah.
one stands out, just kind of the way it all worked out. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's funny that like you're talking about Kentucky Lake and Paris Landing. My mom's dad, my granddaddy, had a cabin in Paris Landing, and so we would go up there a couple times a month to the cabin when we lived in Nashville, and so I can remember, well, one, and this was, you got to think, this was back early '90s, mid '90s, and the guy that lived next door, that had the cabin next door, they were buddies. They worked together, and we we came across him, and he hit one of the sandbars that was out there, and tore the motor off the boat. But the craziest thing that's ever, like, we didn't think nothing about it. It was winter time, cold as all get out, and you look back like, how in the world did we survive this and the boat not catch on fire? He had like one of those old propane heaters
oh
because it
my
was
goodness,
cold. He had
yep.
it in the center of the boat to try to keep us warm, and you're over here thinking like, you know, because Kentucky Lake's not the smoothest lake that's out there.
Especially in the wintertime.
Right.
She is she's bumpy every day, all
Yeah.
day in the winter.
And so we had a propane heater in the boat with us on Kentucky Lake, and thank goodness we didn't catch the boat on fire. So
Hey, at Guntersville this year, you're talking about how dangerous that is, and I guess it is. I've never really thought about that. Shows how focused I am on catching a bass. But I had to put one in my boat after I think it was the first day of practice this year at Guntersville. You know, it's like in the 20s. Your guides were
oh
freezing,
yeah, it was
and
horrible
it,
when
it
y'all
was a
there.
mess. I went to Walmart up there and bought me one of those little propane heaters and found me a milk crate back behind the restaurant. I probably shouldn't say this, but I didn't really ask if they needed it. It was laying next to the dumpster, so I figured we were good. But I,
Yeah.
I tied me some braid around that thing and tied it up in a corner of that milk crate, and heck, it worked awesome. It didn't tip over. It kept me warm all week. So
Heck yeah. So we got one last question, Pappy. You want to ask it, brother?
Oh, absolutely. And Jake, I mean, buddy, it's been an honor to listen to you and to collab and just be able to talk to you about fishing and different stuff. And thank you for some of the insights you gave us. But if you had one person that you could fish with, whether you know they here present or not, who would it be and why?
oh, that's gosh, that's you put me on the spot there. That's a tough question. I've got a lot of I've been very fortunate to in my position now to work with a lot of different companies and have gotten a chance to take out some Major League Baseball players and got some stuff in the works maybe on the football side this year. I've gotten to fish with some pretty cool people. Several of the my peers and kind of heroes growing up, and heck, they all still are today. But if
Hmm.
I had if I could only pick one, I would say my grandfather. And he's still here. He's shoot mid 80s or so. But the time that he spent with me, when I was, I mean, a little bitty squirt, way too young. Like literally, I was out in his bass boat still in a bassinet type deal.
Mm.
When I was born, of course, my father was, he's an archaeologist here for the state of Tennessee. It requires a lot of travel, and he was, mid 30s or so, and really humping it, with his career and having to travel a lot. And so, it was neat. And I can't thank my grandfather enough for really kind of stopping everything he had going on. He was an OBGYN and gynecologist there in Union City, extremely busy, stayed on call all the time. But if he had a weekend that he was not on call, him and I, rain, sleet, snow, sun shining, didn't matter. We were on Kentucky Lake, whether we were crappie fishing. Obviously, we bass fished a lot, but it really didn't matter. He was going to
Yeah.
make sure everybody in my family, I, I hate to even I hate to even say this because I'm certainly not like giving myself a nickname or anything, but it's just to
Mm-hmm.
kind of show you, the support that my family has always given me, and the recognition that, hey, there is something here, even before I knew, kind of what I was. But I mean, from 6, 7, 8 years old, they kind of called me the chosen one. Like I just, for whatever reason, I have always had a natural, ability to learn and understand bass fishing, and really fishing in general. But I have hyper focused in the bass world. So
Mm-hmm.
even from a little bitty kid, like you could give me a new technique or a brand new bait caster, and you give me just a minute, and I'll have it, uh, you know, pretty well figured out. And so
Yeah.
he saw that, he recognized that, and I will forever, owe him and be in his debt for stopping what he was doing and allowing me to spend that time out on the water, and not just on the water, but he, from a very early age, he drive me there, of course, but would let me run the
Mm-hmm.
front, let me make decisions. I was, I
That's
was
awesome.
fishing,
Yeah.
and so if there's any way that I could ever repay him, just a quick little story. And the reason that I say that, I got an opportunity to take my two sons and my grandfather up to the North Country and smallmouth fish last year. And of course, he's getting on up there in age. I was really worried about the waves and his balance and things, but it was an absolute blast. And even over, and I had somebody ask me this at the Classic a few days ago. What was the most special day of fishing that you've had, either in your career or even last year? And the obvious answer would be the Nickajack and beating Wheeler there. And yes, that was for my career. Uh, Obviously, that you
Yeah.
can't even compete. But spending those 3 or 4 days in the North Country and watching the boys get to reel in, and watching my grandfather get excited, and he got to catch a few, that was just literally that. I've never been more, um, at ease, and I felt so good up there watching them do that, and I hope that we get to do that again this summer.
That's awesome. And just and it's the older that we get, and that I've noticed, like, I don't, when I have somebody out on the boat, I don't have to catch that big fish anymore. I mean, to have somebody else that's in that boat and to share that experience, as the older you get, the more you enjoy those little times,
Yeah.
and you, because I mean, life's too short anyways,
Yeah, I
and
mean, my
so
my my career is, we are wide open. I have not,
right,
I truly have not unpacked my FXR suitcase since last April. I literally, for the first couple months last year, I'd get home, my wife would, we'd wash clothes, I'd unpack the suitcase. By the middle of April last year, I looked there, I said, why are we unpacking it? We're putting it all back in there in 2 more days. Like, so I literally live out of a suitcase. I've got a nice walk-in
yeah,
closet here with tons of clothes, but I live out of the little same suitcase all year. But in saying that, I don't get the opportunity to fish with my kids as much as I'd love to. I mean, it's obviously I want to give back,
yeah,
to them, just as what my dad and uncle and grandfather, everybody that helped me growing up. And
exactly.
it's a busy time. It's hard to balance all of that. And I guess if I was going to give you a traditional answer to that, and I'll keep it short, but I would have to say it would be Alton Senior sight fishing. I don't care what lake. I don't even care outside of smallmouth. They're a little easy. I want to learn, and I wouldn't make a single cast all day long. I just want to stand there and see what Alton Senior sees, or Junior, either one. They're both, in my opinion,
Yeah,
in the top, 1% of your sight fishermen. And of anything in my game that I want to learn more about, it's sight fishing. We just don't here on Kentucky Lake and kind of really the whole lower end of the TVA. Our fish just spawn too deep for us to see them
Right.
more often than not. I have caught some. Don't get me wrong. There are a handful of little places here and there you can see one, but it's never been a major player, and that's
Right.
something that I would love to go watch either of the Outlands go do.
Yeah. That I mean, and it's funny that you say that because I mean they are hammers at it, and like because I enjoy doing that sight fishing myself, and in my opinion, if you couldn't have either one of them, I would want John Cox because to
Yep,
me,
absolutely.
there's
Man, John and I are good buddies, and it is it's unbelievable. And I literally like I hope John doesn't listen to this because I don't want him to think that I'm like using him because we're good buddies, have been for several years. And but I like to call and talk to John after one of his, let's call it, less than stellar events. It's unbelievable how, I don't want to say careless, but like carefree he is.
oh
And I
yeah,
am the complete opposite. You ask anybody that's around me tournament week, I am tensed up, I'm tight, I'm walking on my tippy toes and all fired up. And he is just so laid back. Like I talked to him a little, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. He was headed to an event. I don't want to say which one, but he was headed to an event. And I said, "Well, you got your house, what, where, how's your living quarters this week?" That's just something us traveling pros always talk about. It's usually pretty comical what we end up staying in. He said, "Why?" Now this was like 8:30 at night. He's still like 2 hours from the destination. He didn't have a place picked out. He said, "Oh,
yeah,
I don't know, Jake. I'll find me somewhere when I get there." I'm like, "To what? Like what do you do if all the hotels are booked up? Or obviously you're not booking an Airbnb." He said, I just keep driving until I find one. I'm like, man, John, I'd love to have that. Like just that
yeah.
mentality of, oh, we'll figure it out when we get there. And that's how he fishes. And I'm telling you, now he is unbelievably good. Like he understands shallow fishing. He understands the spawn and a lot
Yeah.
of bass fishing. But I think that his carefree mentality, he doesn't get worked up. He doesn't get stressed. Like he is
Always
truly going
smiling.
to wake up every morning and have the very best time that he can have. Now, he's going to work hard at it, but he's
Yeah.
not going to build any more into this than what's already there,
Yeah.
pressure wise. And
We
I'm
did.
telling you, it makes you fish better when you fish that way.
Yeah. So I thoroughly enjoy every time I get an opportunity to talk to him. I always have to do a little interview, and I've never seen somebody, and it doesn't matter like the if it's stressful situations or not. He's always smiling, always,
Yep,
and I was telling Pappy, I said he's probably the nicest guy on tour by far,
one
and
hundred percent, one
and so
hundred percent.
I did ask him though. I said, you're the only person at the classic that does not have forward facing sonar. And I said, so if you win this thing, and this is during media day, I said, if you win this thing on the Tennessee River, I said, how many of these guys do you think's going to be taking that forward facing sonar off of their boat just because you have yours in your truck? And he just
Yep.
started laughing. He said, Colin, I don't know if any of them's going to take it off, but it's going to at least run through their mind, though.
I promise you. And again, it's one of those. John is. I call John from time to time to kind of pick his brain, not on any particular lakes, but hey, have you ever seen this scenario? Like, what did you see? Like, I just kind of run scenarios by him, and he's done that, at me a time or two, and man, his ability to analyze and kind of the way he looks at it. But it's so funny. I'm like, John, man, anytime, it'll be a strong, really heavy scope tournament, forward facing tournament, and we'll talk, and I say, John, anytime, buddy, like we'll just make our schedules work. I promise you I'll shorten your learning curve take us a couple hours. I can at least get you to where you're hitting your targets, that sort of thing. He
Yeah.
said, man, I really appreciate it. He said, but I enjoy he says the same thing every time. I enjoy the mystique of the surprise of that fish bite. And I completely understand and
Yeah.
agree with him. There's not a better feeling than getting surprised by a 5-pounder, that you didn't know was there. But it's amazing that he is staying as strong as he is. But I couldn't agree with him anymore. He said, look, this is what I'm good at. And he said, I know as soon as I turn that on and I start seeing them out there in the middle, that's where I'm going to want to go. And he said, I enjoy fishing the bank. I enjoy the mystery behind it and kind of having to put it all together. And to be honest with you, it's right now with the format or let's call it the rules the way they are. If you have scope all day, he's going to have some tournaments where he doesn't do well. Yeah. But I promise you, it helps him in certain events because there are patterns and the winning fish, the winnable pattern exists up shallow, but it's only a winning pattern if there's only 5 to 10 guys doing it. If 3/4 of the field is doing it, we're all dividing those fish up amongst ourselves. The winning fish existed there, but now it's all split between 20 different boats. There is no question that forward facing and kind of the direction that it's gone the last few years has opened up that shallow game for him. And when it plays, you can see him really make it last the entire event. Whereas there were, 5-10 years ago when we're all up there running the same stuff, it might be enough to get you through day 2. Maybe get you a check, and now you're going to have to go refigure or find something totally new. That pattern is going to be exhausted. So it plays into his hands more than what people realize.
Yeah, and it does, and we enjoy watching, but we enjoy watching you out there, and so I got to look at y'all's schedule to where I can get my nephew back out there to come out there and see you again, because he always asks, you gonna see that guy with the green boat? And so I did tell him that we were having I said we got the guy with the green boat coming on the podcast.
Awesome.
But you definitely have a fan for life with him, and I appreciate it, and for you taking the time, and it's not just you, it's that fishing in general. Y'all guys are phenomenal with the fans of fishing that comes out. It's not like any other sport. Y'all will actually, I don't know, I think you probably sat at the ramp an hour and a half or something like that day, just talking to everybody, and I really appreciate that, and taking the time and taking pictures with everybody of what y'all do to show the fans that y'all really appreciate them for showing up and watching what you're doing, and that's, to me, that's what makes fishing, and one of the best sports out there for fans interaction. And so with that being said, if you're anywhere close to you got OH Ivy here coming up. So
we do. We've got Ivy Brownwood coming, and then I believe it's either Beaver and then Red Crest at Table Rock, or Red Crest and then Beaver. I can't remember exactly in which order there, but we
Red Crest and Beaver. Red Crest.
Okay, Red Crest and Beaver after Ivy and Brownwood. So really looking forward to getting down. Practice starts next Monday for OH Ivy and Brownwood. Again, this is going to be another dual lake event, so it's always adding that kind of extra layer of strategy and timing. Everything's kind of got to go just right in these dual lake events. But I really enjoy them, and I really look forward to getting down there. The West Texas is a new part or new area for me. I've not spent a ton of time down there in all my travels, and man, that is a beautiful place. Like it really is. I went down for maybe 2 days to Ivy. Just honestly wanted to learn more of how to navigate. There's a lot of timber, out there in those Texas lakes, and so I knew that would be important. And man, it's a place that I imagine we're going to see a double digit, maybe even a teener, share lunker. It's a place that it's got them, and we're going at the right time of the year. It's going to be a lot of
That's for
fun. There
sure.
should be a
That's for sure.
fish in a lot of different stages, and it's going to be a great event to watch.
Yeah. So, guys, in the description has the links to Jake's social media. Go check them out. Click them. Hit the share, follow, like, and subscribe. Do all of that, and send him a message on there and just say, "Hey, we seen you on Deck Talk podcast." And brother, man, we deeply appreciate you coming on. And if you're ever in the Chattanooga area, you always have a place to lay your head at, and if you want to go hit old Nickajack, we'll be happy to have you hop in the boat with us and stuff. So
let's do it. Hey, I am all in. I have not set foot on Nickajack since the very moment that all went down. So I love to get back out there and see if she's still good to me.
Heck yeah! So guys, we want to thank the sponsors for that had helped us out or sponsored us going to the Bassmaster Classic. But with that being said, guys, remember, God loves you as if you're the only person in this world to love, and we will see you next.